what if you only discovered the true meaning of life when there's no time left to live it? It's a haunting thought, right? Most of us spend years chasing goals, collecting achievements, or ticking boxes, only to look back and realize we never truly asked ourselves, why am I here? What's my real purpose? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, devoted his life to exploring that very question. Through his profound insights into the human psyche, he uncovered timeless truths about finding meaning, truths that can completely transform how you live if you choose to hear them now, before it's too late. Because deep down, we all fear the same thing, not death itself, but the idea of reaching the end and realizing we never really lived. So in this video, we're diving into the wisdom Jung left behind. Insights so powerful that once you understand them, you'll never see your life the same way again. Stay with me, because by the end, you might just discover the shift you've been searching for your whole life. Here's the truth. Carl Jung wanted us to understand, meaning isn't something you stumble upon at the end of your journey. It's something you create every single day. Most people imagine finding purpose as if it's hidden at the finish line, something you earn after decades of working hard, raising a family, or checking off life's milestones. But Jung's psychology tells us otherwise. He believed that a meaningful life begins when we connect with what he called the self, your truest, most authentic self, beneath all the masks, titles, and expectations. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most of us spend years running on autopilot, living for what others expect of us, or chasing goals that, if we're honest, aren't even ours. We wait for a someday moment thinking, I'll focus on what really matters when I have more time. But someday has a habit of never coming. Let me share a simple example. I once met a retired man, let's call him James, who had spent his entire life climbing the corporate ladder. He was proud of his achievements, but when I asked him what he missed most from those years, his answer surprised me. He didn't talk about the promotions or the bonuses. He talked about the mornings he skipped breakfast with his kids to get to work early, the vacations he never took, the hobbies he never had time for. It wasn't until retirement, when the noise stopped, that James realized happiness had never been about status. It was about living in alignment with his values. And he wished he'd learned that decades earlier. That's exactly what Jung meant. Your self, that deep inner compass, already knows what matters most to you. It might be creativity, helping others, learning, building, or simply being present for the people you love. But if you ignore it, you risk waking up one day feeling like you lived someone else's life. So how do you start living with meaning now, before it's too late? Jung's approach was surprisingly practical. First, you have to get quiet enough to hear your own inner voice through journaling, meditation, walks in nature, or even honest conversations with yourself. Second, start aligning your daily choices with your core values, not just your big life decisions, but the small ones too. Ask yourself, what am I doing today that my future self will thank me for? Or better yet, what am I avoiding today that my future self will regret? Because meaning isn't waiting for you in some distant, ideal future. It's built in the way you live this day, and the next one, and the one after that. And here's the beauty of it. Once you start living from that place of authenticity, you'll find that purpose stops being something you search for. It becomes something you live, breathe, and naturally share with others. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's where we hit one of his most powerful and most uncomfortable truths. If you want to live a meaningful life before it's too late, you have to face what Jung called the shadow, the hidden, unacknowledged parts of yourself you'd rather avoid. The shadow isn't just about your bad traits. It's made up of every thought, feeling, and impulse you've learned to suppress because they didn't fit your self-image, your culture's expectations, or the story you've been telling yourself about who you are. It could be anger you've swallowed for years, desires you've buried because they scared you, even talents you've abandoned because someone once told you they didn't matter. The problem: when you refuse to face your shadow, you end up living only half a life. You're like a puzzle with missing pieces still recognizable but incomplete. And here's the hard truth: people often realize this too late. They hit retirement, face a health scare, or lose someone they love. And suddenly the weight of all those unspoken truths, all those avoided parts of themselves, comes crashing down. That's when regret sets in, not for what they did, but for what they never allowed themselves to be. Think about it. Maybe you've met someone who seemed perfect on the outside, successful, polite, always agreeable. But deep down, there's a restlessness they can't explain. That's the shadow calling. It shows up in subtle ways, snapping at loved ones for small things, feeling jealous when a friend succeeds, or feeling inexplicably drained, even when life looks good. Jung believed the shadow wasn't our enemy, it was our teacher. Those traits we try to reject are often the key to our wholeness. When we integrate the shadow, we stop wasting energy pretending to be someone we're not, and start living with a fuller, richer sense of self. Let me share a story that brings this to life. A woman named Claire spent decades being the nice one. She never said no, never argued, never let her real opinions show. People loved her for it. But Claire was exhausted. After a burnout in her late 50s, she began therapy and discovered she had been repressing anger since childhood. She thought anger made her a bad person. But as she began to face that part of herself, she learned that anger, when expressed honestly and respectfully, was a sign of self-respect. It gave her the courage to set boundaries for the first time. By integrating that piece of her shadow, Claire didn't become less nice, she became more real. Here's the paradox: what you fear facing the most might be exactly what will set you free. That's why Jung said the shadow holds not just the darkness, but the gold of your personality, the hidden strengths, creativity, and passion you can't access until you stop running from yourself. So how do you begin this process? Shadow work isn't about diving into every dark memory at once. It's about curiosity and honesty. Start by noticing your emotional triggers. What kinds of people or situations make you feel irrationally angry, jealous, or defensive? Those moments are clues to parts of yourself you've disowned. You can also ask yourself, what qualities in others irritate me the most? Often they're the ones I secretly possess or long for. When was the last time I felt deeply ashamed? What did that moment reveal about my fears? What am I most afraid people might discover about me? And here's the question I want you to sit with, the same one Jung would ask if he were here. What are you most afraid to face right now? Don't just answer in your head. Write it down. Name it. Because the moment you shine light on your shadow, it stops controlling you from the dark. This isn't just self-help fluff. Neuroscience backs this up. Emotions we suppress don't just disappear. They show up in our bodies as stress, in our minds as anxiety, and in our relationships as conflict. Facing your shadow isn't just about feeling more complete. It's about living healthier, more authentically, and with fewer regrets. But be warned, this work is uncomfortable. You might have to admit you've hurt people, or that you've betrayed your own dreams. But here's the reward: every time you integrate a piece of your shadow, you gain more freedom to live in alignment with your true self, not the role you were assigned, but the life you were meant to create. Jung put it simply: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If you've ever wondered why certain patterns keep repeating, why you keep choosing the same type of partner, Why you sabotage opportunities, why you can't seem to feel satisfied. It's probably because the shadow is in the driver's seat. Facing it doesn't just change your life, it can save it. Because the biggest regret people have at the end isn't failure. It's never having truly lived as themselves. And maybe that's why you're here watching this video. Because somewhere inside, you already know there's a part of you waiting to be seen, heard, and embraced. There's one thing Carl Jung understood that many of us try to forget: time is the only asset you can never earn back. You can rebuild a career. You can fix a relationship. You can recover from financial loss. But the hours, the days, the years that slip by while you're too busy or not ready yet, they're gone forever. Jung's psychological research and his countless clinical sessions taught him something profound. People's relationship with time changes drastically once they confront the reality of death. Not in a morbid, depressing way, but in a way that strips away the illusions we hide behind. When you know the clock is ticking, suddenly the small stuff stops mattering. Petty grudges lose their grip. The real questions rise to the surface. Am I living the life I was meant to live? Am I giving my gifts to the world? Am I spending my days the way I want my life story to be remembered? And here's the kicker: you don't have to be on your deathbed to have this realization. You can choose to wake up to it now. The problem is, most of us don't. We keep telling ourselves we have time. We'll pursue our dreams someday. We'll repair that relationship when things settle down. We'll finally take care of ourselves after the busy season. And then one day we realize that someday never came. Jung saw this pattern over and over in his patients. Many only discovered the real meaning of their lives when they thought they were running out of time, and by then some opportunities were gone. He warned about the danger of living unconsciously until it's too late. Not too late to breathe, but too late to truly live. I want you to picture this. Imagine you're looking back on your life from the very end. You see the risks you didn't take because you were afraid of failing. The passions you abandoned because they weren't practical. The words you never spoke because you thought there would always be another chance. That's the moment regret moves in, and regret is heavier than any burden you carry in the present. Jung's insight was simple but revolutionary. Mortality awareness is not a curse, it's a compass. When you truly understand that you won't be here forever, you stop wasting your limited time on what doesn't matter and start focusing on what does. You stop chasing someone else's idea of success and start aligning your life with your authentic purpose. Let me tell you about Mark, a man in his early 60s who spent 4 decades in corporate finance. On paper, he had it all: wealth, status, a beautiful home. But when a sudden health scare landed him in the hospital, he found himself staring at the ceiling one night, thinking, if this is the end, have I lived the life I wanted? The answer was no. He'd lived the life others expected of him. Within a year, Mark left his job, moved to a smaller house, and started teaching financial literacy to underprivileged teens, something he'd always dreamed of, but never had time for. The irony: he'd had the time all along. He just hadn't realized how precious it was until he almost lost it. You don't need a crisis to have this wake-up call. You can choose to live with that awareness now. The question is, will you? The danger of not acting today is real. Psychologists call it temporal discounting. We undervalue the present in favor of an imagined future. We think our real life will start after we achieve the next milestone, after the kids grow up, after we retire. But life is happening right now. This moment, as you hear my voice, is your life. Not the one you hope to have someday, the one you actually have. Jung would challenge you to ask yourself, if I knew I had only 5 years left, what would I do differently starting today? It's a question that cuts through excuses like nothing else. Because the truth is, none of us are guaranteed even that much time. The people who live most fully aren't the ones who feel immortal. They're the ones who live as though every day matters. So here's a hard truth. If you don't make the change now, you probably never will. Life has a way of filling your calendar with noise until there's no room for what matters most. And then, it's too late. Not too late to breathe, but too late to become the person you could have been. But here's the flip side, and it's the good news. The moment you decide to value your time as the rarest, most irreplaceable currency you have, everything shifts. You stop saying yes to things that drain you. You stop postponing your passions. You start carving out space for the relationships, the work, and the experiences that actually light you up. That's why Jung urged people to face their mortality now, not later. Because once you do, you see that meaning isn't something you find at the end of the road. It's something you create in every step you take. So I'll leave you with this thought. If you knew the clock was running down, not in a distant, abstract way, but in a clear, finite countdown, what would you change tomorrow morning? Who would you call? What would you finally start? And maybe the bigger question is, why are you waiting? Carl Jung believed something most of us instinctively know, but often forget. Life's deepest meaning comes from the connections we cultivate not just with people, but with the values, passions, and experiences that truly matter to us. When you strip away the titles, the possessions, the routines, what's left? It's the faces of the people you love, the memories you've made together, the quiet moments of understanding, the joy of being seen and accepted exactly as you are. Jung spent years observing that people nearing the end of life rarely talk about wishing they'd worked more hours or bought more things. Instead, they talk about the conversations they never had, the love they never expressed, the apologies they never gave. Words like, I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, these are the ones that echo in the mind when it's too late to speak them. Think about it. How many relationships in your life right now feel unfinished? How many people do you care about but haven't told in years? How many conflicts are still hanging in the air because you're waiting for the right moment to make peace? Here's the uncomfortable truth. There's no guarantee that moment will come. Let me tell you a story. There's a woman named Ellen in her late 70s who once told me the biggest regret of her life wasn't something she did. It was something she didn't do. She had a falling out with her best friend over something small, something neither could even remember clearly years later. They didn't speak for over 2 decades. Then one day Ellen learned her friend had passed away. She never got to say, I'm sorry or I miss you. That silence became a weight she carried for the rest of her life. Jung would say that's the cost of neglecting the connections that give our lives meaning. But connection isn't only about mending broken bridges. It's about nurturing the ones we already have. We live in a time where we're more connected digitally than ever before, yet loneliness is at record highs. The irony is, we scroll through hundreds of faces on social media, but rarely look into the eyes of the people sitting right across from us. Jung's work reminds us that true connection is presence, being fully there for the moments that matter without distraction. So how do we live this out? Start with the relationships that matter most. Call the sibling you haven't spoken to in months. Write a letter to an old mentor. Tell your partner not just that you love them, but why you love them. Small, consistent acts of connection often matter more than grand gestures. Jung also encouraged connecting with the things that truly matter, and that means living in alignment with your personal values. If you value creativity, make time to create. If you value service, volunteer. If you value learning, never stop being a student. Relationships with people are vital, but so are relationships with the parts of yourself that bring you alive. And here's a perspective shift. When you deepen your connections, you also strengthen your resilience. People who have meaningful relationships recover faster from setbacks, cope better with stress, and find joy even in difficult seasons. That's not just poetic, it's backed by decades of research in psychology and health science. Human beings are wired for connection, and when we honor that, life becomes richer. Now I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, if I had just one more week to live, who would I want to spend it with? What would I want to say to them? What would I want them to remember about me? If answering that question makes your heart ache a little, maybe it's a sign you have some calls to make, some bridges to mend, or some love to give now, not later. Because here's the reality. Waiting is the enemy of connection. Every day you delay saying, "I love you" or "I forgive you" is a day you risk losing the chance forever. Jung's reminder is clear. Life is short, but meaning is long-lasting if we choose to invest it in the people and values that matter most. So don't wait for the perfect moment. It doesn't exist. The perfect moment is the one you have right now. So here's the truth Jung wanted us to see. The meaning of life isn't hiding at the end of some long road. It's in the choices you make today, right here, right now. Every moment is an opportunity to live in alignment with what matters most to you. But if you keep postponing, if you keep waiting for the right time, you risk waking up one day realizing it's too late. You don't need a grand life-changing plan to start. In fact, the most powerful shifts often come from the smallest steps. Call that person you've been thinking about for months. Write the message you've been too proud or too afraid to send. Take one concrete action toward a habit you've been avoiding. Or face that one fear that's been quietly running your life from the shadows. The key is to do something today before the day slips into another year, before another year slips into a lifetime. And now I want to turn the spotlight to you. Of everything we've explored from Jung's philosophy today, what hit you the hardest? Was it the reminder to face your shadow, to treasure your time, to nurture the connections that give your life purpose? More importantly, what's one thing you will actually do this week because of it? Type your answer in the comments. Don't just watch, participate. This is where insight becomes action, and action becomes transformation. If you're ready to go deeper, I've linked another video for you. 7 regrets people have before they die, and how to avoid them. It's the perfect next step if you want to make sure you're living with no regrets starting now. And finally, if you haven't already hit subscribe. Every week, I share more insights, real stories, and practical tools to help you live with more purpose, presence, and meaning. Life is too short to drift. Let's make sure you're steering it toward what truly matters. Remember this, meaning isn't found, it's made, and you're making it every single day.